Hi again. Welcome to part 2 of Meal Prep 101. So now you're going to just watch me quickly prep some meals for the week. So these are the meals on the lineup for the week. I'm making sheet pan honey garlic chicken and broccoli, Hawaiian beef, slow cooked minestrone soup, tangy baked chicken, and roasted broccoli. Okay. And the nice thing about this tool, it's called 5 Meals 1 Hour. The nice thing about this tool is that you can put how many servings you want of each one and you can change it. So I did 4 servings of everything except the minestrone soup. I did 8 so that we can eat that twice, or we can eat it for lunch or whatever we decide to do. I don't mind eating leftovers, but I get bored. I eat leftovers once and that's the end. So I try not to have too much extra food. And then, like I said, I keep my lunches really simple. So if I have my dinner prepped for the week, it saves me a ton of time. And it makes us eat out way less. Because how many times do you run into, oh my gosh, I forgot to take the chicken out. I forgot to do this. I forgot to do that. I need to get this from the store. And then you're like, forget it. I'll just eat out. And for a while, after a while, your waistline starts to have a problem, and so does your wallet. So I don't make much resolutions because resolutions are meant to be broken, but one of my goals this year is to eat out less and try to be a little more thrifty with my grocery shopping, so that I have extra money any place I can get it. So anyway, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to make is the sheet pan honey garlic chicken and broccoli. I've already labeled my bag. You probably can't see it, but it's labeled in orange. So that when I have this in my fridge, I know what it is. I also have labeled on there the quick directions, so it just says 400 degrees, 20 to 25 minutes. I'll refer back to my sheet to make sure, I put it on the pan right and all that, but that's just so I know, so when I take it out, when I get home from work, I can preheat my oven and I know that part's done. So this calls for 4 boneless chicken breasts. So I'm going to put those in my bag. Okay. So those are in my bag. Okay, those are going to sit right there. I'm going to give my hands a quick wash. I'm going to touch chicken. Of course, my dish soap is running out right now, but bag in my hands, a quick wash and touching that. All right. Next we need, I'm going to mix all of my sauce stuff in this little bowl so that I know what I need. Set this over here so you can see what I'm doing. Move this down just a little bit. There we go. Okay. And as you can see, I've already chopped all my veggies. All of my things are open. So when it comes time to prep, it's a little bit easier. Okay, so I need 3 tablespoons of honey. I'm going to start there. Okay. One little trick that I like to do when I'm getting anything out that might be sticky, I spray with a little bit of cooking spray because it slides out of the thing a little bit easier. So I'm going to, and thankfully my honey looks like it's going to behave. These ones are hard to. I'm going to do my 3 tablespoons of honey. Probably easier if I took the lid off of this. Okay, there's 1. And when you put that stuff in there, it just comes off of it a lot easier when you pre-spray it. There's not a lot of honey sticking around down there. That's 1. That's 2. And 1 more. You can hear my kids playing in the background, so if they start fighting, this is just real life. The real life is a meal prepper here. They've been really good today, so as far as one of them's not chiming in yet. I asked them to stay out of here so we can focus on what we need to do, but we'll see how long they remember that. Anyway, all right, so I got my 3 tablespoons of honey, and then I need I need some soy sauce and some ginger. Well, what I've opted to do is use my ginger orange teriyaki sauce instead. So that's what I'm going to do. I do this with recipes all the time. I just find, because I love these sauces. Excuse me for a minute. I just find, a recipe that I think it would go well with, and I substitute instead. But, if you're more of a soy sauce ginger person, then, you could do that too. But so this calls for 1/3 tablespoon of soy sauce and 1/3 teaspoon of ginger. So I'm just going to do 2 tablespoons of this sauce. And I think that would be a good amount. And mixed with the honey, it's going to be awesome. Any honey teriyaki is always good in my book. Okay, so I've got that, and I make a huge mess when I'm doing this, but luckily I have everything out I need, so it's a really easy cleanup. Next I would need some garlic, and I've already pre-smushed my garlic, so I'm going to add that in here. And then I need salt and pepper, and that's it. So I'll do a little bit of pepper. And a little bit of salt. My son was in here. He would tell you to do more pepper. He loves pepper. Okay, I'm going to whisk this together just to kind of get all those flavors mixed. Okay, it smells incredible. Okay, it looks yummy. Maybe I should just drink some now. That wouldn't be very good. Okay. So there's that. I'm going to take it, I'm going to pour it right over my chicken. I'm going to use my little spoon from earlier to just kind of scrape out everything that's in there. You don't want to lose out on any marinade. Use every little bit you can. Okay, so that's going in there. Okay, this is going to go over here for a minute. And then it also calls for shredded carrots and broccoli. So I've got my shredded carrots. It wants 1 1/3 cup. Okay, I could measure. I'm not going to because I know that this is probably out of a cup. And I'll add a little bit more. Okay. I'm not much of a measurer when it comes to vegetables in my food. I just figure add what you want. And then it calls for 10 2/3 ounce of broccoli florets. So this is a 48-ounce container. So I know if I use about 1/4 of it, I'll be good. So I'd say that's pretty good. So I'm going to close that up. And then I'm just going to kind of shake it around a little bit, move it around, make sure it gets coated really well. If you have really cheap Ziploc bags, which I'm not knocking your Ziploc bags if you have cheap ones, sometimes when you're doing this, the ones that aren't zippers will like to explode, so just be careful. Maybe do it over a sink just in case. That's happened to me once or twice. So, all right, so I've got the flavors pretty well incorporated. So now I have 2 options. I can put this in my fridge and make it, in the next couple days, or I can throw it in the freezer and then take it out of the freezer, the night before I want to cook it. So for me, this is going in the freezer because I'm going to make this next week. So that's it. So that's done. So the only thing I'm going to do before I put it in the freezer is I'm going to try to get as much of the air out as I can because it freezes better that way. And there you go. It's ready for the freezer. So that's going to go in the freezer. Okay, so that's my first recipe. Okay, so before I start my next recipe, one thing I do is I rinse out my measuring tools because sometimes I use them again. And I don't want too much of a mess while I'm making this. And I use this towel to rinse them out as I'm going. Okay, so that's that. I got a little bit here. I made a mess with that one. Okay, rinse out my whisk. Okay, and then I'm also going to rinse out my bowl. One thing that I notice, that I love, I should say, is one thing that I love is just the quickness that these meals come together. You know, I'm going to be able to prep everything really quick, and my kids have yet to come in here and hassle me while I'm doing this. So the quicker I can get this done, the more likely it is they won't interrupt me. Anyway, okay, and I'm sorry, there's lots of onions in the air, and my nose is really sensitive to them, so I have a runny nose problem right now, but that's all right. Anyhow, here we go. So now we're going to go on to our Hawaiian beef. Okay, again, I have it labeled. This is a really quick one to make, too, because you broil it for 4 to 8 minutes, and it's done. So, I mean, it takes maybe 10 minutes to heat up the broiler, and then another 8 to make it, so it's done in 20 minutes, basically. All right, so this one, we need a pound of the top sirloin. So I've got my meat right here that I've already pre-cut, and I'm doing my best to not even touch the raw meat because, oops. Okay. So I need some in my bag. There's my meat in the garbage there. And then I need, it called for red onion. I'm not a fan of red onion, so I'm using sweet onion. And I just had to cut them in chunks, so that's what I'm doing. And as I mix these up in a minute, I'm sure they'll separate a little bit. So that's my onion chunks. Okay. Next would be 2/3 a tablespoon of garlic powder. So here is my garlic powder. Take this little, oh, actually. 2/3 tablespoon of garlic powder. So basically I'm going to use, because 3 teaspoons equals a tablespoon. So if it's 2/3 tablespoon, it's 2 teaspoons. Okay, so I'm going to use 2 teaspoons. 1, 2. Okay, 2 teaspoons of that. And then it calls for 2 teaspoons of the allspice. Oh, broke my own rule. Didn't have this one open before we started, so I'm going to have to open it. Okay, so this is also 2 teaspoons. That smells amazing, by the way. 2 teaspoons of allspice. We have garlic, we have allspice. All right, this is where we need 1 1/3 cups of pineapple. I'm not measuring it out. This is a little more, this is probably almost 2 cups, but I'm adding it all because, which I'm going to take 2 pieces out and eat them in a minute. But I'm adding most of it because I don't want to waste it. So I'm just going to throw it in here now and be done with it. Okay, so there's all my pineapple. Then it calls for cherry tomatoes. Nobody in my family really likes cherry tomatoes except me, so I'm not putting them in there. That's one key to meal planning too. Just because a recipe has something you don't like in it doesn't mean you can't change it. You are your own person. You can make your own decisions. The recipe is not your master. Okay, so I am instead going to add a little bit of broccoli because I have so much. Just a little. Not a lot, just enough to give it some extra something. And then I'm also going to add some of my favorite Korean barbecue sauce. This is not in the recipe, but again, I like to add a little more flavor to some of my stuff. So I'm just going to go 2 tablespoons on this, just to coat it a little bit. And this is a thicker barbecue sauce, so sometimes it takes a minute for it to come out. But I'm just going to do 2 tablespoons of this, just to give a little extra flavor. And with the allspice and the pineapple juice and the garlic, it is going to taste phenomenal. And this Korean barbecue has a little bit of a kick to it. It's actually got it's got a little soy sauce, semi-sweet chocolate, vinegar, a little bit of jalapenos, dried chili peppers, sesame oil. It's got some really great yummy things in it. And adding 2 tablespoons is not going to add too much heat where my kids will be like, oh, my mouth's on fire. Because it's actually not super spicy. It's more of just a hint, a little kick. Anyway, so I'm rinsing out my measuring thing again. All right, putting the lid back on barbecue sauce. Okay. All right, and I think that's everything. So again, I'm going to kind of move everything around in there. And realistically, I probably could have done the Korean barbecue, mixed it with the garlic and allspice, and then added it. But it just means I have to mix this for a little bit longer. And I try to mix it around so the meat gets mixed in there really well, too. All right, the pineapple juice is really going to help this marinate well, too. So again, this is one that I'm going to freeze because it'll freeze well. So I'm going to get all the air out as much as I can, seal it back up, and then that's going in the freezer as well. Okay, up next is the slow-cooked minestrone soup. So that's here. All right, so this one, I'm putting everything in for the soup except the chicken broth, and you can freeze it with the chicken broth, but if you don't have a big freezer, you have to be really careful because it will leak if you don't lay it right. So I tend to just mix all of the soup ingredients, freeze them, and then when I'm ready to make it, I throw the broth in the crock pot and just put the frozen stuff in there and let it cook. And it works out really nice. So this one calls for, this one doesn't have any meat in it, actually. So this one calls for, we have a 1 1/3 cup of, it says frozen chopped onion, pepper, celery, but I already had all 3 of those things in my fridge. So for me, I just chose to cut them up. So they're all right here on my cutting board. So I'm just gonna dump my cutting board right into the bag, or at least gonna try. I'm gonna do this over the sink because I tend to see if we can do this without losing anything. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? Okay, so shake it in there. All right, so we got all our vegetables in there, all the cut up ones, all the fresh ones. And then it calls for 18 ounces of tomatoes. I'm gonna go ahead and just put both cans in there. It's just gonna be a little more soupy. And then it calls for 25 ounces of beans. I'm going to add both cans too. I just don't like to waste, and I don't see myself using this for anything else right now. So I have my cans. I'll rinse those out later for recycling. I got my beans. I bought, this calls for, I think, what's it called, for light or dark kidney beans. I bought a can of both because I'm like, why not? So that's all of my soup seasoning. See, if I added all the broth, for one, it's not going to fit in the bag. And for two, it's just going to be too much liquid in one place. And that makes me nervous. All right, so I put all that in there. I also need carrots, called for frozen carrots. I have the remainder of my, what do you call these? My matchstick carrots. So I'm going to just toss the rest of those in there. I'm a big fan of carrots, so the more the merrier. So then I have 3 things I'm adding to here. I'm adding some Italian dressing. So the Italian dressing is 1/3 cup. I believe it's right here. Yes. 1/3 cup of Italian dressing. Okay. And then I'm also adding some Italian seasoning. I think it's right here. Yep. And it calls for 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning. There that is. So 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning. Oh, Oh, there's another one I don't have open. That I used to see before. Oh, okay. Anyway, always surprises in my kitchen. Okay, so this calls for 2 teaspoons. And then I'm also going to add to this one of my favorite mix-ins for any kind of super stew is my burger seasoning. Okay, and this is, you use a tablespoon of this per pound of meat when you make like a meatloaf or hamburgers. So I'm just going to use like a small spoonful. Just going to use about that much, a little less than a tablespoon. And just because it adds some really good salt flavor, and this has some really incredible yummy things in it. So it's got garlic, paprika, onions, cocoa powder, Worcestershire sauce, molasses, semi-sweet chocolate. So there's some really yummy flavors. So it adds another whole flavor dimension to what you're making. And then the day I cook this, I may also add, this is supposed to be minestrone soup, so it calls for noodles and things like that. So like this, I have to be really careful when I mix it up because it has a lot of liquid in it. And if I mix it too much, it will end up everywhere. So this, I just want to get my carrots mixed in there a little bit more. All right, so this is pretty much ready for the freezer if I choose to freeze it. This one I may not freeze because I think I'm going to make the minestrone soup tomorrow when I'm at work. I can sit in the crock pot all day. So that one's probably going to just go in my fridge. Okay, I'm going to do a quick pickup of all this garbage. Lid back on here. Okay. All right, the next recipe that we're going to make, I'm going to set these really quick. I'm done with my cutting board. Okay. So the next recipe I'm going to make is the tangy baked chicken. So here's that. All right, I already have it open. So I'm going to put my chicken breasts in here. I've already got them. I'll try to do this without touching them this time. Got them in here. So those are in there, and then I'm going to do a mix back in my bowl of, I have, let's see here. All right, so I'm going to do, this calls for Dijon mustard. However, I'm going to use my white chocolate raspberry honey mustard. And I am going to do, oh, that's not what I needed. It's calling for 1/3 of a cup. I'm not going to use quite that much. I think I'm going to use 1/4 of a cup. And so here's my 1/4 of a cup. Use my spoon to put that in here. Oh, I probably would have dumped it though. Probably should have sprayed that before, but it's all right. Okay, so I'm using about, I make a mess. This stuff is so messy. I love it, but it's so messy. Okay, so that's about 1/4 of a cup of the white chocolate raspberry honey mustard. This is going to add, so this recipe calls for Dijon mustard. The reason I'm adding this instead is this is going to add like a nice honey sweetness to the flavor. So it's going to be tangy and sweet. So it's going to be like a really nice mix of stuff. All right, so that was my white chocolate raspberry honey mustard. I'm going to put that over here because I'm going to wash that side off there. Then it calls for maple syrup. I'm not adding the maple syrup because the honey is in here. So I think that it doesn't need both. Next, I'm going to do rice wine vinegar. So I don't know why I shook that, but so this is, I need a tablespoon of this. Okay, put a little tablespoon in there. Okay. Next, I need dried rosemary. And that's it. And how much rosemary do I need? Okay, so I need a teaspoon of rosemary. And these are the full rosemary pieces, which is fine. Flavor. All right, I'm going to take my whisk and whisk all that together. That leaves us more of a thicker sauce, but the more you mix it together, the thinner it gets. You can kind of see it. If I add a little more vinegar to this, or I did like red wine vinegar or apple cider vinegar, this would make a great salad dressing too. So just a side note on that. The honey mustard is probably one of my favorites. It's our best seller probably every month. But that's beside the point. Okay, so the only other thing I need to add to this is some broccoli. I'm going to do that after I mix this with this though. Ooh. Okay, so mixing all that in there. I can't believe how yummy this smells. Okay, I'm going to put that over here. Okay. So pour that over the top. I'm going to add a little bit more broccoli. Like I said, I got a lot of broccoli to get rid of, so instead of wasting it, I'm just going to use it up. We love broccoli, so it doesn't really, we'll eat it every day. Alright, so mix it all together with that yummy, yummy marinade. Alright. Roll all the air out, seal it back up. Ready to go. That one's probably going to go in my freezer also. The last thing I'm making is the roasted broccoli. So all it is broccoli. And I'm going to add as much broccoli as I can. I'm going to fill 2/3 of this bag up. And then the kids are getting broccoli. Anyway, filling up 2/3 of the bag. I love these big broccoli bags you can buy from Costco because they're really cost effective and you get a lot of use out of them. And for me, like because I'm meal prepping a lot of it ends up in the freezer and it cooks beautiful when it comes out. So, all right, so I got the bag a little more than half full. I could add a little more, but I'm not going to. Actually, just like a little bit more in here. Okay. Okay, so what I'm doing with this is I'm doing a little bit of olive oil. And I'm just going to mix my stuff in here instead. So it calls for a tablespoon of olive oil. Okay, so tablespoon of olive oil. A little bit of onion. I'm sorry, a little bit of garlic. I do have some minced garlic right here. I didn't realize I even had. So calls for just a teaspoon of garlic. And a little bit more for flavor. I like garlic, so okay. So that's my garlic, and then salt and pepper. I'm not going to add pepper, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Here's a little bit of salt. And then what I'm going to add to this is my white chocolate lemon peppercorn vinaigrette. This is fantastic on any roasted vegetable, sauteed vegetable, or even just on plain chicken. I love it on broccoli. My kids love it. They eat it right up. So I'm going to do just a tablespoon of this, I think is enough. Doesn't need a lot. This packs a lot of flavor. It's very peppery. And you really don't need a lot, like I said. So, okay, so I'm going to take my whisk. I have to rinse it yet. mix that together. Okay. And I'm gonna dump that right over my broccoli. And it doesn't look like a lot of oil, but it goes a long way. It really does. So I'll just get as much as I can out of there.
This is so crazy. This is
Move that all around. You just need to get it lightly seasoned. It roasts better the drier it is, actually. So if you do freeze this to roast it, it won't get as crispy, but it'll still have a ton of flavor. So that is the roasted broccoli. Okay. And it's ready to go. Freezer friendly. Okay. So now all that's left to do is a quick cleanup. So I put all my sauces away, put my seasonings away, and the extra produce I have left over gets put away. It's actually going to get put in my kids' lunches that I'm going to make in a minute. And then that's it. My meal prep is done for the week. And this took us, let me see how long this meeting's been running for. I don't think it tells me. This took us about a half hour, I think. So that's really not bad. So all of this meal prep probably in total maybe took maybe an hour and 10 minutes with the cutting and getting everything out and everything. So if I can do this with 2 children running around at home, so can you. My best advice to you is check out the resource that I'm using to help me meal plan. It's called 5 Meals in One. I'll put the link under this video. And then see what kinds of things you can do with that, because it saved me a ton of time this week, because usually I meal plan everything myself. And honestly, like, that was the thing I needed for me for right now, because it's been so busy. Anyway, if you ever want me to plan a meal prep workshop for you, I have several classes that I teach, so I'm happy to do one with you. We can even go online together. Just give me a buzz. Check out the link for the 5 Meals in One, and also check out if there are any products you're interested in. Check those out as well. Thanks. Check me out on Facebook, Meal Plan with Tara. Have a wonderful day.